Hello to all my colleagues in Puerto Rico from Southeast Raleigh, North Carolina. Today I will be presenting a short sample of my writing activities portfolio. It's going to be 6 writing activities for the benefit of all learning community. But who are these activities for? What's the purpose of each one of them? What skills and abilities I'm trying to develop? These activities are intended to be for 7th grade EFL students, and the material covered for different purposes and skills and ability development is the steps of writing, different formats and standardized ways to present information, reading, speaking, and listening. But why I decided to focus on 7th grade EFL students? Because that was my last experience as an English teacher in Puerto Rico. I used to teach from 7th grade to 11th grade, but I found the 7th graders particularly interesting because of all the different backgrounds and their different levels in English language. So let's start discussing the writing activities. But first, we need to line up the activity with Puerto Rico's standards to teach English. The student uses the writing process, applies rewriting strategies to generate ideas, uses the dictionary and the thesaurus as an aid in the writing process, revises writing, proofread to identify errors in spelling, capitalization, and ending punctuation when pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and writes a final draft. This is how the activity looks like. It is divided in 3 parts, the 3 first steps in the writing process. It is a really simple activity. The student has to write 1 paragraph of at least 5 sentences about their feelings. So let's get started as a writer. The objective for this activity is the student will create a text about the assigned subject, feelings, following the first 3 steps of the writing process: pre-writing, drafting, and revising. In the pre-writing process, I introduced the concept of brainstorming, but in this case, it will be guided. The student will have 7 to 10 minutes to write about this subject nonstop. And if they get stuck, they can actually write down, "I'm stuck and I don't know what to say next." They should not worry too much about grammar, punctuation, or spelling in this step, because the goal here is to generate as much as you can about the subject in a short period of time. Okay, now it's time for drafting. Once the students have something to work with on page, they can start the decision-making process, which is crucial to develop coherent ideas and arguments. The students have been making a series of choices about their ideas that would lead them to feel ready to write. And that's when the tough moment of writing begins. They might have troubles getting their ideas on page and might need to be guided. However, this exercise may ease their entries into shaping ideas for an assignment. This is the part of the students' writing in which they have to focus on the structure, text, spelling, and grammar. In other words, the students need to ask themselves what ideas I'm going to use for my text, what ideas I'm not going to use for my text, what ideas need to be developed, or what ideas are just fine the way they are. And in this part, they should focus on structure, spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Revising will continue guiding the decision-making process. Think about it. Sometimes we write something that sounds perfect for us. It sounds great, but it might confuse our readers. So that's why we need feedback. We need an audience. We need ways to share our writing so the decision-making process will be easier. And who is going to be the audience for these young writers? You, the teacher, and his or her peers. The purpose of this activity is to help the students develop their writing skills by visualizing a structure organizing ideas, while they pay special attention to the mechanics of writing, spelling, punctuation, grammar, among others. My modifications for this activity, according to the needs of second grade EFL students, are instructions. They are really clear and short. Second, the subject. I wanted my students to reflect, and also, there's no wrong answers when you talk about your feelings. Also, the usage of L1. It is very difficult to develop your ideas in L2 if you haven't acquired enough vocabulary to do it yet. Okay, the original activity could be found in this website right here. And this was activity number 1. Okay, now we are in activity number 2, writing letters. The objective for this activity is the student will create a formal and informal letter according to the information discussed in class. This activity has been modified in 3 ways. 1, it gives the student the chance to create a letter rather than just compare one like in the original activity. Number 2, I added a couple of examples of conventional readings for formal and informal letters. And number 3, I also added abbreviations of how to refer to people in English. The standard for this activity is the student identifies elements in descriptive, narrative, expository, and persuasive forms of writing, uses a variety of sentences types to construct a paragraph, applies organizational patterns to construct narrative, descriptive, and expository paragraphs. Okay, this is how the activity looks like. The student has to write a letter using both structures, informal letter structure and formal letter structure. In this activity, the student has to write a formal letter to a client asking for a certain item that the company needs. In the informal letter, the student has to ask a friend to buy an item that he or she does not have access to. As you can see, I included the conventional readings and ending for formal and informal letters and the different ways to refer to people in English. Finally, this is the worksheet where the student is supposed to write. Okay, the original activity could be found in this website right here. And okay, now let's discuss activity number 3. This is 1-minute paper inspired in the quotes of Vincent van Gogh, Martin Luther King Jr., Bruce Lee, and Pablo Neruda. The standard in which I base this activity is the student listens and responds during a read aloud from a variety of fiction and nonfiction to comprehend, generalize, relate to character and settings, and make connection to the text. Okay, the objective for this activity is the students will express what the selected quote means for them. Part 1, the teacher will gradually present the quotes. They could be written on the board or handed in a piece of paper. In my case, I would just write it on the board. Okay, part 2, the teacher will have a timer, read the quotes, and the student needs to write all the ideas possible about the quote in just 1 minute. So, let's begin. What would life be if we have no courage to attempt anything? Normality is a paved road. It is comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow on it. Vincent van Gogh. If we do not act, we shall surely be dragged down the long, dark, and shameful corridors of time reserved for those who possess power without compassion, might without morality, and strength without insight. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you're not in this world to live up to mine. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Bruce Lee. To feel the love of people whom we love is a fire that feeds our lives. Pablo Neruda. When the teacher had read all the quotes, the student will pick one that fits his or her feelings and explain why they identify with it. The explanation will be orally, but they can organize their ideas by writing them down. My modification. The original activity focuses just in the 1-minute paper, and I added a more reflective part by asking the students to choose a quote they identify themselves with and explain why. And this was these were my 3 writing activities. Let's get started as a writer, writing letters, and 1-minute paper. In Let's Get Started as a Writer, I cover the first 3 steps on the writing process. In the activity, writing letters, I present a standardized way to present information, letters. And in the last activity, 1-minute paper, my purpose was to make the student reflect. A great part of my activities are introspective. I want my students to express themselves, their feelings, what are their vision of the world, and what are their experiences. I think this is a great way to know them and to explore their learning needs. So this was my video presentation. I hope you'll like it. Bye.